Hi, this is Liz Ryan, and this is the Work Related Podcast, episode 20. It's a really exciting episode of the podcast because we have a guest with us, Akua Asare from Berkshire, UK. Akua, thanks for being here.
Hi, Liz. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm delighted to join you for this exciting episode.
Oh, not in the slightest. It's my pleasure. We're going to talk with Akua about her journey and the learning that she got and share some advice. And I'd like to start by sharing a little bit of Akua's bio with you. So Akua Asare is a healthcare leader, quality assurance specialist, and a champion for women in STEM. Akua has spent 20 years building quality systems and processes for the development of new pharmaceutical products and medical devices, growing and leading teams and mentoring junior staff. Akua is the founder and CEO of Professional Women at Work Limited, a networking organization who support and celebrate women in business. Akua coaches students to executives who are looking for a new career, returning to the workplace, who need guidance with job hunting and job interviews, and much more. Akua delivers fun and engaging workshops for companies as well and organizations on a variety of topics, ranging from effective communication to diversity and inclusion. So once again, thanks, Akua. We're going to talk a little bit about your journey to get here and just lessons along the way. So
That's great.
just to get started, how did it all begin? What was the earliest part of your journey?
Yeah, taking me quite a while back there, Liz.
Yeah.
So I started, like most people do. I obviously graduated from university in science. It's quite common to study a scientific degree of some sort. So I studied biomedical science. And that's when I graduated back in 2003. I was basically at the start of my exciting career, hoping to be a scientist working in the lab. And yes, that's where my journey started in the beginning.
And so you graduated, and did you just walk right into your dream job, or?
Oh, I wish, Liz. I wish. No, it wasn't that smooth for me, unfortunately. I wasn't one of the few fortunate people that had contacts or anything. So I was fresh out of uni and applying for jobs absolutely everywhere and not really understanding the process and just getting a ton of rejections and thinking, oh, this is a lot more challenging than I thought it would be. And what I ended up doing was taking on a voluntary job in the end, because I got to a point where I was just sitting at home and I was really bored and struggling to find a job. And I thought, well, I might as well take some time to do something. And I didn't want to fill my days with just applying for jobs and waiting to hear back from recruiters. So yes, I took on a voluntary job to begin with.
And did you put that volunteer position on your CV?
I did actually. I didn't know it would be something of interest to anybody. So I was doing the voluntary job just for fun for myself. It was just creating these little packs for school kids on nutrition. So I was just sitting down with a pile of envelopes, stuffing them, sending out these cute little badges to kids and working in an office environment and just dreaming about being in the lab at the time. I do remember that. And I put it on my CV just because I thought, well, I could add this role on. It's a voluntary job, but who knows?
Right.
And that really opened the doors for me, actually.
Okay. So that's lesson one, right? If you did it, claim
Absolutely.
it. Yeah, claim it.
Mm-hmm.
And a conversation starter, I would imagine, on interviews.
Yes, because one of the things I realized is there wasn't a lot that I could talk about apart from my university degree. I did a few jobs in retail over the summer, but it wasn't enough of a story for me to really get my teeth into and explain what I was doing to make the changes in the community. And I think that was a really good story. And it's like what you say about your dragon slaying stories. It might not be monumentous. I wasn't there making £1 million a year or anything like that,
Sure,
but it was an interesting story. It was something engaging that I could discuss with
I love
those
it.
who were
And so
interviewing me. Mm.
the voluntary job sounds like helped you get your first professional role. Is that correct?
Yes, it did. And what it taught me really is not to be discouraged in those early years when you're applying and looking for jobs, and just be persistent, and eventually something will turn up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't find anything at the time, definitely reach out to your network, see what's out there, speak to people, take on a voluntary job. I would definitely recommend that. It was,
Mm-hmm.
they even paid for my travel. I remember that distinctly, because I thought, oh, I wonder how I'm going to travel and pay for those costs. And they even cover those. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Nice. And so what was the next step then?
So I did actually get my dream job. So I thought, working in the lab as a scientist. And I started at the very bottom of the ladder. It's a very long ladder. And I
In a
was
lab,
just
working in a
in a
lab.
lab.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a virology lab. I remember this. It was my first professional job. I remember wearing my lab coat, feeling very special. And after about a couple of months, I realized that wasn't the environment for me. I actually preferred being in the office environment. That's something
Mm-hmm.
else I learned from the voluntary role.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the scientific side of what I was doing was running routine samples. I was a bit isolated. I was kind of on my own, just
Mm-hmm.
running samples all day, or sitting at reception waiting to collect samples. And I realized quite early on that if I wanted to get ahead, it would take a long time in that particular organization, because people stay there for a long time in their roles. And to get a promotion or to get ahead, they were saying something like once every 5 years or so,
Wow.
someone gets promoted. And I just thought, there must be more. So whilst I was working there, I was quite interested in what happened to the samples, actually. And I started following the trail of those. And I followed some clinical trial samples. And I wondered, oh, clinical trials, that's really interesting to me. And that's how I ended up in research.
Oh my goodness. And so how did you actually engineer that move?
Mm. So one of the types of works I was doing was with HIV samples, and we were looking at viral loads between the mother and the baby. And these were actually clinical trial participants. I remember asking the porter who was bringing me the samples, like, where are you getting these samples from?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, oh, it's a clinical trial unit just down the road from here. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when I thought, oh, in my lunch break, I went off to investigate.
I
I
love
literally,
it. I love it. Follow
I
that
turned,
trail.
yeah, I followed the trail. Exactly. That's how I ended up
You got
finding out a bit more.
altitude. You got altitude. How does the whole system fit together? Good for
Yes.
you.
Yeah. And yeah, I knocked on the door, introduced myself, and they said, yeah, we've got some job openings actually. And it was that simple, a conversation, not even an interview.
Wow.
And yeah, I was working there in the next month or so.
And
So it
so
worked out.
from there, you took on leadership roles and you grow teams and you're mentoring. Can you tell us a little bit about
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah,
path?
I guess one of the key things that stood out to me when I was beginning to sort of go up the ladder, so to speak, was the fact that everything I was learning was either on the job or through mentors that I found myself, allies and mentors in the
Mm-hmm.
workplace.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't actually go on any course like learn how to be a manager or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. Everything
Mm-hmm.
I was doing was kind of through trial and error and learning my mistakes along the way, and sort of saying, okay, that didn't work so well. Maybe change up your approach or do things in a different way. And obviously, like most of us in the workplace, we all have line managers, and learning how to navigate those types of relationships with your own line managers. And I found in the beginning, I think I was probably in my 20s around there, I really took an opportunity to move a lot in my career then. I wanted a couple of things, I think. Firstly, I wanted to travel. and I wanted to see the world. And I wanted to do a role where I could sort of nosy around. And that's how I became an auditor, actually.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. How you became an auditor.
Yes. So,
You know,
yeah.
there's a thought process, a body of knowledge around this idea of boundary spanners, people who move through boundaries, functional and organizational, and they do what you did. They look more broadly or from altitude, and they say, how does this piece fit into this piece? Maybe I should meet this person. Maybe I should talk to this person. And they end up having a better sense of how organizations work and how industries work, a sense of how people operate together. And it's a matter of deciding. I guess some people have a natural bent in this direction, but deciding to get out of the cubicle mentally, to get out of the cubicle and look beyond. Sounds like you're one.
Yeah. Thank you, Liz. That's a nice compliment. I think for me, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So the only way I could find out was by moving around, and then seeing what type of environment I like, what types of organizations I like to work for. And what I was always looking for in the beginning has really changed over time. It's one thing I've noticed about myself. And I think a lot of people are doing this more and more, where your values are becoming even more important almost than the salary, because you want to work somewhere where you're treated well, and in an environment which is positive environment to work in, with colleagues that you want to work with. Sure. And I think that was something I never really factored into my earlier stages of job hunting. It was always about the title, the money, and the location was the highest priorities for me. It's definitely developed over time. And
don't you feel as you become a manager, that becomes even more important? Because if you have to manage, I mean, if you're managing a team, then the culture and the way that employees are treated just becomes so critical. You can't sell a product you don't believe in, right? And when you're a manager, you're kind of selling the idea of working in this place.
Yes, and also I've noticed as well that people are beginning to look at their managers and sort of say, why I would like to work with you. What do you have as a quality?
Yes.
What is it about you that would make me want to work with you? And that wasn't the case before. It was just, this is your line manager and deal with it. Yeah. Deal with it. And now, yeah, it's definitely changed.
Have you had a candidate ask you that on a job interview? Why should I work for you?
A lot of candidates, actually, because I do interview quite a bit, and I have over probably the last 4 years or so. Candidates might ask me, why do you like working in a particular company? Or what kind of management style do you have? And I remember listening to your podcast and you did talk about that, management style. So it's quite a tough one to answer. But what I always try and give my interviewees is some sort of insight as to who I am. I volunteer up that information because maybe some people wouldn't feel comfortable sort of turning the tables around in an interview.
Sure.
So I open that up. Yeah, I am. What I like about interviewing people is, most people start with that sort of rigid structure, and when you start talking with them, right, they just relax.
It makes
and then they open up. It does.
A difference.
You get to see beneath the exterior, and that's my favorite part, because I think, oh, I know who you are a little bit more now.
Absolutely. 15, 20 years ago, maybe more, it was a fad. It was popular to do like a stress interview. We're going to put this candidate under so much stress and hammer them with questions and freak them out and get them rattled and see how they react. And I heard about that, in the HR community. And I said, no, we're not doing that. Apart from it's kind of abusive, don't you want a person comfortable? Don't you want to get the real person?
Right. And I think one thing is definitely in my mind, I used to think that everyone was looking for the perfect person, the perfect candidate. And I remember just having that mindset of the perfect candidate is, and I had, in my mind what the perfect candidate is. And I know you have so much experience yourself in HR, Liz, and when you interview people and you read their CV and then they are in front of you and they're still that perfect candidate,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing how many times the interviewers actually say, we don't want to hire that person, even though they tick all the boxes and say all the right things. It's because they have no personality. That's not quite, you have to bring that personality across.
Right.
If you don't, I think you can definitely lose the gig.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. As a matter of fact, I tell job seekers that the worst thing that can happen on an interview, I mean, assuming that they're cool with you and they're professional and they don't leave you sitting in a conference room for an hour. But the worst thing that can happen that's within our control as job seekers is that they don't even remember they talked to you. And it's very common, unfortunately, very common. I used to walk around the building, run around the building saying to managers, so Bob, you met Carolyn yesterday. How did that go? I did. Yes, at 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. I brought her over here myself. She had curly hair and she had a pink jacket. I don't remember. She worked at Cisco. She worked at Google. She has a Welsh Corgi. I mean, this is before LinkedIn, so I couldn't show a picture. You could literally don't remember. I'm sorry, Liz. My mind is, I've got 1,000 things going on. I feel like I did meet someone yesterday. Well, let's go and see if you have notes from the interview. It's very easy to answer the questions put to you correctly, and leave nothing behind. Like it's not an oral exam. It's not the owls like in Harry Potter, where you have to just give the right answer. There's no prize for giving the right answer. It's bring something out, like you said. Say what you feel.
Yeah, and I think that might have been something that helped me in my career a little bit, because I don't think that I've ever done an interview where I've just given standard expected answers to everything, the cliches. What was your strengths and weaknesses? I never do those. I
So
just
what would be an
always
example? Do you have an example of a time when you answered an interview question in an unexpected way?
I think someone asked me once, like, why did you leave this workplace, or why did you leave that workplace? And I gave them all the honest answers. I still got the job. Because that actually led to the conversation. I said honestly, like, that particular person or manager that I had, this was the situation, and they said, oh gosh, that sounds quite challenging. And I said yes. And I think that understanding between me and the person who interviewed me and asked the question, they knew that I was telling my side of the story honestly.
Yes.
Because I wasn't given the standard answers like, oh, I love that company so much, but it was time to move on and grow.
Yeah. And I think that confidence, it's funny because that type of honesty, I think, works in both directions, right? If they couldn't handle it, then you don't want to work for them anyway. And the fact that they didn't react badly and they said, I'm really getting the straight story from Akua here, says that they already know you more and trust you before you even start the job.
Yeah, and I think what your stories, everything you're saying about yourself, is even going further to sort of demonstrate who you are. And that's why those dragon slaying stories are so important, because it can show you going above and beyond, thinking outside of the box,
right.
Not trying always to be this perfect person.
Right.
What's so great about people are all the differences that we have, actually. It's not about being a cookie cutout of someone else.
Mhm.
And it takes you a long time to learn that because you've got to shake it out of your system.
I think it's so true. It does take a long
Mhm,
time. And speaking of lessons learned,
mhm,
this path that you've been following and that you're on
mhm,
has obviously not been trouble free. It's not been
mhm,
just like a walk in the park. Could you just share with us some of the challenges along the way and some of the obstacles
mm.
that you've had to face?
Yeah, I think, I've always had situations where I've been fortunate enough to get into some great companies and work for some great organizations. But then there's always that something when a situation might arise, and it could be just something as simple as, discrimination, and how I navigate around that. It could be, impossible to get any recognition of any sort. Um, salary negotiation, things like that could be quite challenging.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I've learned along the way for myself is, that I have two options. I can stay and continue to maybe be put into a situation that makes me unhappy,
Mhm.
where I can't thrive, where I can't give my best, where, I could go home and be quite miserable at the end of my day. Or I could leave. And I
Mhm.
found, that's quite liberating. I think one of the challenges is obviously most of us need to work for financial
Sure.
reasons, of
Sure.
course. So it's not always easy to just get up and leave. You might have to do a stealth job search. But I found for myself that I have a belief that there are so many jobs out there. And that's what I tell myself. This is not the only job in the world.
Mhm. Mhm.
There are other jobs out there. Take the time, look and find something. Look for those red flags, which you mentioned in one of your podcasts about the company cultures. And
Right.
that's really important, actually,
So
for
important.
me.
Mhm.
hmm And for me, if the company culture isn't right for me, it's very difficult to change it. Now, a
Mm.
lot of people stay in companies and say, well, the grass isn't greener on the other side. I hear this quite a bit, like, almost to say, this is the best it's ever going to be. I don't agree with that.
Mhm. Mhm.
I always think there's better out there in terms of, your people. It
Yeah.
might not look,
Your
and
people,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. But this is, I think, still a forward view. This view
mhm,
that you're talking about, there's something better out there I haven't seen yet. I haven't tried yet. I want to add that experience to my toolkit and my tapestry that I'm building
mhm,
here. There is a very widespread belief in the devil is better than the devil you don't know type of thing. And I am always having to talk people or trying to talk people out of that. Like, but what if it were better?
mhm,
I think there's some kind of an idea like I have a job and I don't like the job, but it's stable. And then I
mhm,
have to say, why is it stable? What, what gives you that impression? Because these jobs in general are not really that secure. And you don't grow your job security by staying in a job longer. That doesn't correlate.
mhm. And its change is quite difficult for a lot of people,
Mhm.
and especially if you're somebody who doesn't change that often. You don't change your jobs. You
Mhm.
just, to me, I want to stay here for 10 years. Some people actually have a defined set, I'm going to stay here for the next 5 years of my life, and then, when I get to the end of 5 years, then I'll consider new and exciting
Right, right,
things.
right, right.
And it's that time period that can sometimes,
I hear, when my
yeah.
kids finish school, when I,
Mhm.
whatever, pay off my car. Um, Kuya, you started a professional organization. You want to tell us a
Mm.
little bit about it?
Yes, it's called Professional Women at Work. It's a company where it's a network for professionals. It's not just for women. It's called Professional Women at Work, but it's for people of all different backgrounds and industries. We come together, share experiences about the complexities of the workplace. And I think it's a great way to network with people
Yes,
because
that's
it's,
brilliant.
it's yeah, I
And
think it's an opportunity for people to learn from each other and to grow. Mhm.
And so, how do people learn more about that?
So you can Google my website. So
Okay.
it's prof, as in PROF,
Okay.
women, and
Yes.
then at atwork.co.uk.
Okay. Profwomenatwork.co.uk.
Mhm.
Love it. And find out all about it. Professional Women at Work. So wonderful. So I have a couple of more questions for you if you have
Mhm.
time. Um,
Sure.
you talked about mentoring, and you have a team that you supervise at work, and you, I'm sure, mentor them in various ways, especially people who are new in their careers. Have you benefited from mentoring yourself? Have you had people support you?
Absolutely. Yes. I think at every point of my journey, I've always been quite lucky to find people in every company I've ever worked with, organization, who, and there are people out there who are more than willing to give time to teach you the ropes, to share their knowledge with you. And I remember just one day I was really struggling to use a system, and you can just walk up to a colleague and say, "Can you help me out here?" And you can start conversations.
Mhm.
Do you understand this? Great. Do you mind showing me a bit more about that? It doesn't have to be someone who sits in your team, doesn't have to be your line manager. You can find mentors anywhere. You can even reach, some people I know reach out to people on LinkedIn, or
Mhm.
through their network as well, or go to conferences and meet people and ask them to be their mentors. But yes, it doesn't even have to be anyone that you specifically work with in the same organizational company. But yes, I've definitely found so much uh, support and advice. And I also think it's good to be an advocate for other people as well.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
goes both ways. So when
Mhm.
I see someone struggling, or if I see someone needing help, I always offer. I think it's
Mhm.
important to help each other.
Mhm. And your mom, I think, was a role model and a force in your journey.
Yes, absolutely. My mum, she had really great work ethics, and I think that's where I get mine from fundamentally.
Mhm.
She, like most people, my mother was a very hard worker at home as well as in the workplace.
Mhm.
And you just think it's amazing how people manage everything. And yes, she would always be working very hard on time. She took great pride in the job that she did. And I remember having lots of conversations about my mum about the workplace, and you know she always used to say to me, it's really important to find somewhere that you're going to be happy for 5 days. Most of us work full time, and if you do,
Mhm.
you do have to find somewhere that you are going to be happy.
Mhm.
And yeah.
Great advice. That's great advice. And also the confidence embedded in that statement that she knew you could do it. She knew you deserve that, and
Yes.
you would find that place.
Yes, my mum, she raised three daughters. We're all very headstrong. And yes, she did a great job. And I think all of us in our own ways, we really want to perform well at work and do great. And even yourself, Liz, you're one of my mentors.
Aw.
I can't even thank you enough for everything, all the advice you give, not just to me, obviously, to countless of numbers of people. And I'm a human workplace coach, and every week, more or less, speak with the other coaches as well. We all learn from each other. And I
Yes.
love that community where no one's afraid to ask a question.
Mhm. Mhm. And I'm so glad that you are in the coaching community, Akua. It's a fantastic thing. But perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your coaching.
Yes, so I joined the Human Workplace Coaching Network back in February, and I just took the opportunity because I listened to Liz a lot, podcasts, I read all the blogs, such a huge fan. And I think I was the first UK coach to sign up.
I think
I'm
that's
taking
right.
that. Yeah, I think I'll
Yeah.
take that little.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Uh-huh.
And yes, it's just been fantastic. So one of the courses I completed was becoming a career coach, essentially. And it's just been eye-opening, rewarding, and so insightful. Human workplace, it means a lot to me because I do really want the place of work to get better for all of us. I really do. And if we can sort of help other people to see how to do that, how to interact better with each other, how to make someone's day just a little bit lighter. I think, you know, even just saying to somebody, I think with my team in particular, if someone says they got to log off early or they want to go for, you know, a bit of a longer lunch, it's never an issue for me. It's never something I think twice about. And I want us to be more like that, where we get less suspicious of people in the workplace and say, of course, go and enjoy an extra 20 minutes of sunshine. Who would care?
Yes,
You know?
exactly. More trust,
Yes,
right?
more trust.
Absolutely. Akua, thank you so much for being our very first podcast guest. You're just so lovely to talk to, and it's a wonderful, inspiring story. Now, how can people reach you that'd like to get in touch?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as well. So my spelling is quite interesting of my name, but it's Akua, and my surname is Asare, Asare. And as again, you can get me on my website too, profwomenatwork.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Akua.
Thank you, Liz.